Ethan had always believed he'd forged something unbreakable, a life carved from ambition and grit. 10 years ago, he'd been nothing, a scrappy coder with a beat-up laptop and a rented room that smelled of mildew. Now at 35, he stood at the helm of a thriving tech firm, its sleek logo emblazoned across a glass tower downtown. His home was a sprawling retreat perched on the edge of Lake Mirren, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the water's shimmer at dusk. Success hadn't come cheap. Every line of code, every sleepless night had been a brick in the foundation of his empire. But it wasn't until Lily stepped into his world that he felt the picture was complete. He first saw her at an art gallery opening, a low-lit affair packed with pretentious chatter and overpriced wine. She stood apart, a striking figure in an emerald green dress that hugged her frame, her dark hair tumbling in loose waves over one shoulder. She wasn't mingling like the others. Instead, she lingered near a canvas, a chaotic swirl of crimson and gold. Her brow furrowed as if deciphering its secrets. Ethan, nursing a glass of bourbon, watched her for longer than he'd admit before curiosity pulled him across the room. "Does it speak to you?" he asked, gesturing at the painting. She glanced at him, her hazel eyes sharp and assessing, then smirked. "It's trying to, but it's shouting too loud to say anything worth hearing." Her voice carried a playful edge, and Ethan laughed, caught off guard by her candor. They fell into conversation effortlessly, about art, ambition, the absurdity of the gallery crowd. She introduced herself as Lily, a painter scraping by on commissions, her talent undeniable but her name unknown. She spoke of her dreams with a fire that lit something in him. Galleries of her own, canvases that would stop people in their tracks, a legacy beyond the cramped studio apartment she called home. Ethan recognized that hunger. He'd felt it once too. "I want to make something that lasts," she said later that night, her gaze fixed on the city lights beyond the gallery's windows. "Not just survive. I want to matter." He nodded, captivated. "You will. I can see it." She turned to him then, her lips curving into a smile that felt like a private gift. "You sound so sure." "I am," he replied, and in that moment, he meant it. They were inseparable after that. Dates turned into late-night talks at his lake house, her laughter echoing off the polished wood floors. She'd sprawl on his couch, sketching idly while he worked, her presence a quiet thrill he hadn't known he craved. Ethan had dated before, polished women who matched his world. But Lily was different. She was raw, unfiltered, a burst of color against the grayscale of his routine. 8 months in, he couldn't imagine a future without her. The proposal came on a crisp autumn evening. He'd planned it meticulously, a private boat ride across Lake Mirren, the water glassy and still, reflecting a sky streaked with orange and pink. He'd hidden the ring, a sapphire set in platinum, her favorite stone, in a sketchbook she loved, slipping it into her hands as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Lily," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous thrum in his chest, "you're the piece I didn't know I was missing. Marry me." Her eyes widened, then softened. She traced the ring with trembling fingers before looking up at him. "Ethan, yes. God, yes." They kissed as the boat rocked gently, her arms tight around him, and he felt invincible. The wedding followed swiftly, a lavish affair at an old stone castle nestled in the hills. Ivy clung to its walls and chandeliers glittered above a sea of guests. Tech moguls, artists, friends who'd watched Ethan rise. Lily was radiant in a gown that flowed like liquid silver, her smile dazzling as they danced under a canopy of stars. He'd given her everything that night, a fairy tale moment, a promise of support, a life she'd only dreamed of. In return, she gave him her vows, her hand in his, and what he believed was her heart. The early days of marriage were a blur of joy. She'd tease him over breakfast, her bare feet brushing his under the table, her laughter bright against the morning quiet. He'd catch her painting on the deck, sunlight catching the gold flecks in her eyes, and wonder how he'd gotten so lucky. Ethan poured himself into her dreams as much as his own. When she talked of opening her first gallery, he didn't hesitate, writing checks, securing a space in the city's art district, connecting her with collectors who could lift her name. She'd hug him fiercely after every milestone, whispering, I couldn't do this without you. And he'd swell with pride. Looking back, he'd marvel at how blind he'd been. He never questioned why her sketches often stayed unfinished, why her stories of late-night inspiration felt rehearsed. She was there, beside him, playing the part of the devoted wife with a finesse he mistook for love. He didn't see the calculation in her glances, the way she studied his world, his wealth, his network, like a map she intended to master. Ethan had built his life on logic and instinct, but with Lily he let emotion rule. He loved her fiercely, recklessly, believing she felt the same. And for a while that belief was enough. But foundations, even the strongest, can crack. Lily's ambition, the trait he'd admired most, was about to reveal a sharper edge, one he hadn't anticipated. The lake house, the gallery, the life they'd woven together, it was all real to him. To her, it was something else entirely. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the woman he'd vowed to lift up was already plotting a ascent that didn't include him. The first chapter of their story had been perfect. The next would shatter it. The honeymoon glow lingered longer than Ethan expected. For nearly 2 years, life with Lily felt like a painting in motion, vibrant, unpredictable, and wholly his. Mornings at the lake house unfolded with a rhythm he cherished, the scent of coffee mingling with turpentine as she worked on her latest canvas, her hair pulled into a messy bun, smudges of paint on her cheek. She'd flash him a grin when he left for the office, her voice lilting, "Don't code the world away without me." He'd laugh, kiss her forehead, and head into the city, buoyed by the thought of her waiting when he returned. She shone brightest at his company events. Dressed in sleek, asymmetrical dresses, always her own design, she'd glide through the room, charming investors with her quick wit and disarming stories about her art. "Ethan's the genius," she'd say, resting a hand on his arm, "but I keep him human." The room would chuckle and he'd bask in the warmth of her praise. Her gallery, Lamora, opened to rave reviews 6 months after the wedding, its white walls lined with her bold abstracts. Ethan had poured a small fortune into it. Rent, lighting, a launch party with champagne that flowed like water. He didn't mind. Her success was theirs, a shared triumph. But shadows crept in slowly, so subtle he dismissed them at first. It started with her absences. She'd vanish for hours, claiming late-night sessions at the gallery or meetings with elusive patrons. "Art doesn't sleep," she'd quip, tossing her coat over her shoulder as she breezed out the door. Ethan, buried in his own deadlines, debugging software, pitching to venture capitalists, nodded absently. He trusted her drive. It mirrored his own, after all. When she'd return, her eyes would spark with a restless energy, but she'd brush off his questions with a distracted smile. "Just business, love. You wouldn't get it." The lake house grew quieter. Her easel stood untouched for weeks, replaced by stacks of invoices and gallery brochures. Ethan found himself eating alone more often, the clink of his fork against the plate echoing in the vast dining room. He'd scroll through emails, the glow of his laptop casting long shadows, and wonder when she'd started slipping away. Still, he clung to the belief that she was building something extraordinary. To bolster her, he doubled down, funding a second Lumora location in a chic neighborhood across town. She kissed him fiercely that night, her arms tight around his neck. "You're my rock," she whispered. He believed her. The first real fracture came from an outsider. It was a humid July evening, and Ethan was unwinding at a rooftop bar with Marcus, his oldest friend and a fellow tech founder. The city skyline glittered below, a mosaic of lights against the dusk. Marcus swirled his gin, his brow creased. "You ever notice Lily's gone a lot lately?" Ethan shrugged, sipping his beer. "She's hustling. The galleries take everything she's got." Marcus didn't let it drop. "Sure, but I saw her last weekend at some private auction downtown. She was with this guy. Tall, slick suit, looked like he owned the place. You weren't there." A flicker of unease stirred in Ethan's chest, but he tamped it down. "She's networking. Collectors, dealers. That's her world now." Marcus leaned closer, his voice low. "Networking doesn't look like laughing over martinis at midnight, man. She barely mentioned you. It felt off." Ethan's grip tightened on the bottle, the condensation slick against his palm. You're reading too much into it, he said, forcing a grin. She's chasing her dream. I'm proud of her. Marcus sighed, leaning back. Just keep an eye out, all right? I'd hate to see you blindsided. The words lingered, a pebble in Ethan's shoe. He brushed them off that night, but they gnawed at him in the days that followed. Lily's behavior shifted in ways he couldn't ignore. She'd pull away when he reached for her touch fleeting where it once lingered. Conversations dwindled to logistics, schedules, bills, curt goodnights. Her phone became a constant companion, its screen lighting her face in the dark as she typed furiously, shielding it when he glanced over. Gallery stuff, she'd mutter, and he'd nod, swallowing the questions that burned in his throat. Then came the rumors. A colleague mentioned seeing Lily at a high-stakes art fair, arm in arm with a man Ethan didn't know, her laughter carrying over the crowd. Another friend texted a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of her at a dimly lit lounge, her hand resting on a stranger's wrist. Ethan stared at the image, his stomach twisting. He wanted to confront her, but each time he stopped himself. She'd have an explanation, she always did. And he loved her, enough to silence the doubts, enough to keep funding her ventures, enough to believe she still needed him. One night she came home late, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood. Ethan sat in the living room, the lake beyond the windows, a black mirror under the moon. She tossed her bag onto the couch, her silk scarf trailing behind her like a comet's tail. "Long day?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes searching. She paused, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Exhausting. Some buyer flew in from Paris. Kept me talking for hours." He nodded, noting the faint scent of cigar smoke clinging to her, a smell she'd never carried before. "Must have been some meeting," she smirked, kicking off her shoes. "The kind that pays the bills." She moved past him toward the stairs, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. "I'm crashing. Night." Ethan watched her go, the air heavy with something unspoken. He didn't know it yet, but Lumora wasn't just a gallery, it was a facade, a glittering shell hiding secrets she'd woven with meticulous care. The woman he'd lifted up was drifting beyond his reach, her ambition morphing into something darker. The cracks were there, jagged and widening, but Ethan wasn't ready to see them for what they were. Not yet. The rain came down in sheets that night, a relentless drumming against the lake house windows. Ethan sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop cutting through the gloom. He hadn't meant to pry, not really, but the doubts Marcus planted had festered, spreading like damp rot through his thoughts. Lily was out again, her latest excuse a cryptic client dinner that stretched past midnight. The silence of the house pressed in, broken only by the storm's low growl. Restless, he'd grabbed her tablet from the kitchen counter, intending to check the gallery's latest sales figures. What he found instead stopped his breath. An email notification flashed on the screen, the sender a string of random characters, the subject blank. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the icon. It wasn't his to open, but then neither was the life she'd been living behind his back. He tapped it. The message was short, coded in terse phrases. Transfer complete. 1.2 million secured. Meet at the warehouse, 3 a.m. Below it, a bank statement attachment showed a withdrawal from one of his investment accounts, funneled through a shell company he didn't recognize. His pulse thudded in his ears. This wasn't a mistake. It was a theft. He scrolled further, uncovering a thread of messages stretching back months. Coordinates, cryptic instructions, names he didn't know. One stood out. "Victor says the Monet's ready. Buyer's in tomorrow." Monet? Lily didn't paint classics. Her work was modern, jagged. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Lumore wasn't just her dream. It was a front. Ethan's hands shook as he cross-checked his accounts. Millions drained, siphoned off under his nose, masked as gallery expenses. The woman he'd trusted had been bleeding him dry. Lightning cracked outside as Lily's key turned in the lock. She stepped in, shaking rain from her coat, her hair damp and clinging to her neck. She froze when she saw him, tablet in hand, his face a mask of quiet fury. "You're up late," she said, her tone breezy but her eyes narrowing. Ethan stood, the device heavy in his grip. "What's this, Lily?" He held it out, the email stark against the screen. She glanced at it, then shrugged, peeling off her gloves. "Work stuff. Why are you snooping?" "Don't," he snapped, his voice low and sharp. "I know about the transfers, the accounts. Victor, what the hell are you doing?" For a moment she was still, rain dripping from her coat onto the hardwood. Then she laughed, a cold, cutting sound that sliced through the tension. "Oh, Ethan, you're so dramatic." She tossed her gloves onto the table and crossed her arms. "What do you think you found?" He stepped closer, his chest tight with betrayal. "You're stealing from me, using my money, my name for some scam. Tell me I'm wrong." Her lips curled, a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "You're not wrong," she said, voice smooth as glass. "But it's not a scam. It's business. Better than you'd ever understand." The air thickened, his breath shallow. "Business? You're forging paintings, selling fakes, and you think that's business?" She tilted her head, unfazed. "Not just fakes, masterpieces. I've got a buyer lined up tomorrow for a Monet that'll net us $3 million. Victor's a genius with a brush. And you?" She gestured at him, dismissive. "You made it possible." Ethan's stomach churned. "You used me." "God, don't sound so wounded," she said, rolling her eyes. "You handed me everything, money, connections, a perfect cover. I saw an opportunity and I took it. You'd have done the same if you weren't so busy playing the noble husband." He stared at her, the woman he'd loved dissolving into a stranger. "So this, us, it was all a lie?" Lily sighed, brushing wet hair from her face. "Not entirely. You were sweet, useful, but I told you I wanted to matter, didn't I? This is how I get there." She stepped toward him, her voice softening, mocking. "Come on, Ethan. You can't blame me for wanting more than your lake house and techie dreams." Rage flared, but he forced it down, his mind racing. She thought she'd won, thought he'd crumble. He wouldn't. "Who's Victor?" he asked, his tone icy. Her smirk faltered, just for a second. "My partner, the one who actually gets it." "Your lover," he corrected, the word bitter on his tongue. She didn't deny it. "Call him what you want. He's my ticket out." Ethan clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. "You're leaving me for him." "After tomorrow, yeah," she said, turning to grab her bag. "The sale's done, the money's ours, and I'm gone. You'll survive. You always do." She moved toward the stairs, but Ethan's voice stopped her cold. "Not this time." She turned, brow arched. "What's that supposed to mean?" He pulled his phone from his pocket, dialed a number he'd saved weeks ago, a private investigator he'd hired after Marcus's warning. "I've been watching you, Lily. Every move, every lie. And so have they." Her face paled as the call connected, a gruff voice answering. "Mr. Grayson, we've got the footage. Warehouse, Victor, the lot. Police are on standby." Lily's breath hitched, her confidence cracking. "You're bluffing?" Ethan smirked, leaning against the desk. "Am I? Check your accounts. The ones you thought were safe. I locked them an hour ago." She lunged for her phone, fingers trembling as she logged in. Her gasp confirmed it. Empty. "No, you bastard." "Save it," he cut in. "You played your game. Now it's my turn." The storm raged outside, but inside the real tempest was just beginning. Lily's empire of deceit was teetering, and Ethan was about to topple it. She'd underestimated him, and that was her fatal mistake. The rain had softened to a drizzle by the time Lily's world began to cave in, but the air inside the lake house crackled with a different kind of storm. She stood frozen, her phone slipping from her hand to clatter on the hardwood, the screen still glowing with the stark reality of her frozen accounts. Ethan watched her, his silhouette framed against the desk, the investigator's voice still echoing in her ears. Her eyes, once sharp with defiance, darted wildly, searching for an escape that no longer existed. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice brittle, a threat about to snap. She took a step toward him, hands outstretched as if to claw back control. "Ethan, listen. We can fix this. Call them off." He tilted his head, his expression unreadable, a shadow of the man who'd once adored her. "Fix it? You mean cover up your fraud? Save your little art empire built on my back? He picked up his bourbon glass, the amber liquid catching the dim light, and took a slow sip. I don't think so. Her composure shattered. She lunged forward, grabbing his arm, nails digging into his sleeve. You don't get it. I'll lose everything. The gallery, the deal. My life, your life, he interrupted, pulling free with deliberate calm, was a lie you stitched together with my money and my trust. You don't get to play the victim now. Lily staggered back, her breath hitching. She pressed a hand to her chest, as if anchoring herself. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, her tone shifting to a desperate plea. It started small, a fake here, a deal there. Victor pushed me into it. I didn't want to hurt you. Ethan's laugh was low, bitter, cutting through her words like a blade. You expect me to believe that? You laughed in my face 10 minutes ago, bragging about how easy I was to use. Don't rewrite the story now that you're caught. Her jaw tightened, a flicker of the old fire flaring in her eyes. Fine, she spat, straightening. You want to burn it all down? Go ahead, but you'll crash with me. I've got records, emails, receipts, tying you to every transaction. You funded Lamora. The cops won't care who signed what. He set the glass down with a soft clink, unfazed. That's your last card, huh? Threatened me into saving you? He reached into a drawer, pulled out a slim folder, and slid it across the desk. Take a look. She hesitated, then snatched it, flipping it open with trembling fingers. Inside were screenshots, her emails to Victor, bank logs with her digital signature, security footage of her slipping a canvas into a van under moonlight. Not a trace of Ethan's name. Her breath caught, her face draining of color. How? I'm a coder, Lily, he said, voice steady. I know how to cover tracks. You don't. Every move you made, I traced. Every lie you told, I documented. You're the one holding the smoking gun. Her hands shook, the folder slipping to the floor. You set me up, she rasped, backing toward the wall. You planned this. No, he corrected, stepping closer. You did. I just stopped being blind. He gestured to the phone on the table. The police are already at the warehouse. Victor's probably in cuffs by now. Your Monet? Seized. A sharp knock rattled the front door, jolting her. She spun, eyes wide, as heavy footsteps echoed from the porch. No, she muttered, clutching her hair. No, this isn't happening. Ethan crossed his arms, watching as the door swung open. Two officers stepped in, rain glistening on their coats, followed by a stern-faced detective. Lily Grayson? The detective asked, his voice clipped. She turned to Ethan, her gaze pleading, raw. Please, don't let them take me. We were happy once, weren't we? You loved me. He met her eyes, searching for the woman he'd married, the one who'd sketched by the lake, who'd kissed him under the stars. She was gone, buried under layers of greed and deceit. I did, he said quietly, but you didn't. The detective stepped forward. Ma'am, you need to come with us. We've got warrants, fraud, forgery, money laundering. An officer moved to her side, cuffs glinting in his hand. Lily flinched, twisting away. Wait, he's lying. This is his fault. Her voice rose to a shriek, but the officers gripped her arms, guiding her toward the door. She thrashed, her heels scraping the floor. Ethan, you bastard, I'll make you pay for this. He didn't flinch. Good luck, he called as they dragged her into the night, her screams swallowed by the drizzle. The house fell silent, the air lighter, cleansed. Ethan stood alone, the lake beyond the windows, a dark expanse under a clearing sky. Over the next week, Lamora crumbled, its doors sealed, its paintings confiscated, its reputation ash. Lily's trial was swift. She took a plea deal to avoid decades behind bars, but it stripped her of everything: money, status, freedom. Ethan's lawyers reclaimed his losses. Every cent she'd stolen funneled back to him. He didn't attend the hearings. He didn't need to. Months later, he sat in a new office, a smaller space in a coastal town, far from the lake house he'd sold. The buzz of his phone broke the quiet, a voicemail from an unknown number. He played it, her voice crackling through, broken and small. Ethan, please. I'm lost. I know I messed up, everything. I didn't see what I had. I loved you once, I swear it. Help me. He listened, her sobs faint against the hum of static. Then he deleted it, the sound fading to nothing. The horizon stretched beyond his window, a clean slate of sea and sky. Lily was a ghost, a lesson learned. He'd rebuilt once before. He'd do it again, alone, unburdened, and finally free.